Let's be honest, most people don't set out to ruin their lives. No one wakes up thinking, today I'll betray everything I've built. But here's the truth. Destruction rarely comes with a loud bang. It sneaks in, step by step. Tiny choices, harmless conversations, a single message, a glance that lingers just a little too long. Psychologists have a term for this, the slow erosion of boundaries. And it's real. Now here's where things get uncomfortable. Some of the women most vulnerable to emotional temptation are married. Not because they're weak, not because they're immoral, but because they're human. And like all of us, they're wired for connection, validation, and the quiet thrill of being noticed. The road to betrayal doesn't begin with a bold decision. It begins with silence, with loneliness, with subtle shifts so small, most don't notice until it's too late. So let me ask you, how many of these harmless moments have we ignored in our own lives? A strong marriage isn't just about love, it's about partnership. It's built on shared effort, shared dreams, and a sense that you're walking through life side by side. But what happens when that sense of partnership fades? When she no longer feels like a teammate, but more like someone quietly keeping the household running? Most women who drift emotionally aren't looking for an escape. They're not trying to cheat or destroy what they've built. They're searching, often unconsciously, for something they lost along the way. And more often than not, it's not physical passion they miss. It's emotional intimacy, the deep connection, the feeling of truly being seen. So here's the real question. When was the last time you looked at her, not just as your wife, but as a woman with thoughts, feelings, dreams, beyond the roles and routines? Because once that emotional bond starts to fade, the search for attention begins, quietly, silently, almost invisibly. In the beginning, love feels electric. Long talks at midnight, the way her eyes light up when you walk into the room, the feeling that someone truly sees you, not just as a partner, but as a person. That's what most couples start with. But over time, something shifts. The deep conversations turn into grocery lists, the kisses become routines, the passion replaced by obligation. You're still living under the same roof, but emotionally you're miles apart. Dr. John Gottman once said, "The opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference." And he's right. The real threat to a relationship isn't arguments or fights, it's silence. A cold kind of distance where two people stop noticing each other. So let me ask you, when was the last time you looked at your partner like you used to? Not out of habit, but out of genuine curiosity? Because when love turns into duty, that's when hearts start looking elsewhere. Let's talk about something rarely said out loud. Novelty is addictive. As human beings, we're wired to respond to what's new. New faces, new compliments, new energy. And for a married woman who spent years in the rhythm of routine, even something as small as a kind glance from a stranger can feel like a jolt of electricity. Not because she doesn't love her husband, not because she wants to leave, but because, for the first time in a long time, she feels chosen again. It's called the Coolidge effect, a psychological phenomenon where desire is reignited simply by the presence of novelty. And it's powerful. Think about it. When was the last time someone looked at you like you were captivating? Not out of habit, but because you sparked something real in them. That's what she's chasing. Not infidelity, not drama. Just the feeling of being wanted, like she used to be. Before marriage, she was a whole person, a woman with passions, dreams, quirks, and her own name. But somewhere along the way, that identity slowly got replaced by titles. Wife, mom, caretaker. And while those roles are beautiful, they can also be suffocating. Day by day, she stops being seen as her and starts being seen as what she does for others. The one who keeps the house running, the one who remembers birthdays, the one who gives and gives and gives. But who gives to her? It's no wonder that some women start seeking moments that remind them of who they used to be. Moments where they feel alive, desirable, separate from the roles they've come to live in. And sometimes, those moments come from another man. Not because she's looking to betray, but because she's desperate to feel like herself again. Betrayal never feels like betrayal in the beginning. It starts in the smallest ways, with a thought, a harmless message, a smile that lingers, and the mind whispers, it's nothing. We're just talking. But here's where it gets dangerous. The human brain hates internal conflict. So when our actions begin to drift away from our values, the mind steps in, not to correct us, but to protect us. Psychologists call it cognitive dissonance, and it's exactly how we end up lying to ourselves without even knowing it. It's just a tension. I'm not doing anything wrong. But that's the trick. Most dangerous paths don't start with a leap. They start with a step, a rationalization, a way to feel good while doing what deep down we know isn't right. So ask yourself, what stories are you telling yourself to avoid facing the truth? When someone crosses a line, emotionally or otherwise, they rarely admit it to themselves right away. Instead, they build a story around it, a justification, something that sounds reasonable enough to silence the guilt. It's just talking. What's the big deal? If my husband paid more attention, I wouldn't need this. This has nothing to do with my marriage. It's personal. Sound familiar? These thoughts aren't confessions, they're shields, mental armor we use to protect the version of ourselves we want to believe in. And once those excuses take root, they grow fast. Each one adds a layer of distance between right and wrong. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The moment you need to explain why something isn't wrong, it probably already is. So ask yourself, are you being honest? Or just skilled at sounding honest to avoid facing what you already know? Not all betrayals leave physical evidence. Some happen in silence, through late-night conversations, secret smiles, and words that were never meant to be shared with anyone but your partner. This is emotional cheating, and in many ways it's more dangerous than the physical kind. Why? Because it's easier to deny, easier to hide, and most of all, easier to justify. It's just talking, she tells herself. We're just friends. But when a woman starts sharing her thoughts, her fears, her dreams with someone who isn't her husband, that's not harmless. That's a shift, a slow detachment from the person she promised her life to. Physical betrayal has clear lines, but emotional betrayal, it lives in the gray. And that's what makes it so destructive. Here's the truth. The moment you start keeping secrets from your partner, the affair has already begun. This is where the story changes, from hesitation to conviction. When a woman reaches the point where she tells herself, I've given so much, I've waited, I've stayed, and I deserve to feel alive again, something inside her shifts. It's no longer about temptation, it's about entitlement. This mindset, I deserve this, is the point of no return. Because once someone believes they're not betraying, but reclaiming something that's been denied, they don't just cross the line, they erase it. And can you blame them entirely? Years of sacrifice, of not being seen, of holding everything together. Who wouldn't crave a moment of escape? But here's the truth. The moment we justify betrayal as fair, we've already made peace with hurting someone we once promised to protect. And once the heart fully believes it's owed this, almost nothing can stop it. There's a moment in every story where everything shifts. A single choice, barely noticeable, that quietly changes everything. Maybe it's the first text she knows she shouldn't send, the first innocent meetup, the first time his hand lingers, and she doesn't pull away. It doesn't feel like betrayal yet, but it is the threshold. Psychologists call it threshold theory, the idea that the first time is the hardest, and every time after that gets easier. Because once the line is crossed, your brain starts to adapt. It doesn't fight back anymore. It normalizes what once felt wrong. Think about it. How many habits in your life started with one small compromise? We don't fall all at once. We drift, step by step, until the chain we thought we could break has already wrapped around us. And by the time we realize, we're already too far in to turn back. Here's something most people don't realize. Your brain doesn't care if a connection is healthy or destructive. It only cares how it feels. An emotional attraction? It triggers the same brain pathways as drug addiction. That rush of dopamine, the thrill, the spark, the feeling of being desired again. It's intoxicating. But here's the twist. It's not even about the man. It's about how she feels when she's with him. Alive, seen, wanted. And once that emotional high hits, it's hard to walk away. Because now it's not just a moment, it's a craving. She might tell herself, this is the last time. But if she's chasing a feeling, not a person, that promise is already broken. Because the next time she feels empty, unseen, forgotten, she'll look for that hit again, not out of love, but out of emotional survival. At first it feels wrong. The hidden messages, the quick screen flips, the racing heartbeat when he asks, "Who are you texting?" There's guilt, real heavy guilt. But here's the thing about guilt, it doesn't last forever. If it's not confronted, it transforms. Slowly, quietly, into strategy. She starts planning better, covering her tracks, deleting just in time. And over time, it doesn't feel wrong anymore. It feels normal. The lie becomes part of the routine, and eventually where she believes it. See, the most dangerous deception isn't what you tell others, it's what you convince yourself to believe. The mind adapts, justifies, normalizes. Until the double life doesn't feel like a betrayal, it feels like survival. And by then, the truth isn't just hidden, it's rewritten. So ask yourself, how often do we confuse secrecy with safety and convince ourselves that silence is harmless? There's a moment, quiet but irreversible, when the center of her emotional world shifts. She may still be married, still living under the same roof, still wearing the ring, but deep down, the bond that used to matter most doesn't anymore. Her husband, once her partner, now feels like the outsider. And the real connection? It's happening elsewhere, in hidden texts, in imagined futures, in emotional spaces that used to belong to the marriage. At this stage, there are only two outcomes. She gets caught and everything unravels, or she walks away. Not because she's heartless, but because the double life has become unbearable. Here's the hard truth. When the heart fully commits to someone new, the relationship at home is already over, even if no one has said it out loud yet. So the real question becomes, how long can someone live in two worlds before one of them collapses? Here's something science has proven, but most people still overlook. Romantic and sexual attraction activate the exact same brain pathways as drug addiction. That's right. Falling for someone, even if it's forbidden, can light up the brain like a chemical high. Why does that matter? Because the moment she feels noticed, desired, wanted, her brain responds with a surge of dopamine. And dopamine doesn't care about morals. It cares about the rush. That's why she keeps going back. Not necessarily to the man, but to the feeling he gives her. A feeling she hasn't felt in years. It's not about betrayal. It's about biology, about chemistry, about craving that spark of aliveness again, even when she knows it's wrong. And like any addiction, once the brain gets a taste of that high, it starts searching for the next hit. Logic fades, and emotion takes the wheel. Every time she crosses a line, even a small one, it creates a hit, a rush, a moment where everything else fades, and all that matters is how alive she feels. And like any hit, it doesn't last. So what happens next? The brain starts chasing it, expecting it. And just like with any addiction, the same dose stops being enough. What began as a single moment of validation turns into a cycle. The emotional highs need to be higher. The risk needs to be deeper. The thrill needs to be stronger. Meanwhile, her logic starts to fade. Her conscience, the guilt that once whispered, "You shouldn't," goes quiet. And in its place, justification, defense, excuses. She's not thinking clearly anymore. She's managing the addiction, finding ways to feed it without being caught. But the truth is, she's already lost control. And the scariest part? She doesn't even realize it. At first there's guilt, hiding messages, avoiding eye contact, whispering to yourself, "This doesn't feel right." But guilt is uncomfortable, and the human mind doesn't like discomfort, so it adapts. Slowly the story changes. I'm not doing anything wrong. If my husband treated me better, I wouldn't need this. I deserve to feel good for once. And just like that, the betrayal becomes rational, logical even. The pain is still there, but now it's blamed on someone else. The cheating isn't wrong. It's justified. It's survival. This is the turning point, where someone stops wrestling with their conscience and starts rewriting the rules to fit their actions. And the more they repeat that narrative, the easier it becomes to live two lives. One for the world to see, and one they tell themselves is harmless. But deep down, they know. We all do. Most women don't cheat because they want to destroy their marriage. It's rarely about rebellion or revenge, or even the man she ends up with. It's about her, about a version of herself she hasn't seen in years, the one who felt alive, radiant, wanted, human. She's not looking for someone new. She's searching for something old, something lost in the routines, the responsibilities, the quiet loneliness of being taken for granted. And when a man comes along who looks at her like she's still that woman, who listens, who pays attention, who sees her, it awakens something deeper than desire. It reminds her of who she used to be before life got heavy. She's not chasing him. She's chasing the reflection of herself in his eyes. And when that becomes her truth, walking away doesn't feel like betrayal. It feels like coming home to a part of herself she thought was gone. There's a point where it's no longer about the affair, the attention, or even the other man. It becomes about belief. The moment she tells herself, "I'll never feel this alive with my husband again," something inside her locks shut. And when that belief sets in, it's over. Not because the marriage is unsalvageable, but because her mind has made a decision. A quiet, final decision. One that turns every conversation, every apology, every effort into white noise. It's what psychologists call a mental lock. Once it clicks, no amount of advice, logic, or love can reach her, because she's already convinced herself that the feeling she's found can never be found at home again. And when a woman stops believing in the possibility of reconnection, she doesn't just leave physically. She leaves emotionally, spiritually, completely. Sometimes the real ending isn't a breakup. It's the moment hope dies. Once the emotional line has been crossed and the belief has been locked in, there are really only two ways the story ends. The first, she gets caught. The secret comes to light. And with it, the marriage shatters. Trust becomes dust. And no amount of apology can rewind what's already unraveled. The second, she walks away on her own terms. Not because she stopped loving, but because she can no longer bear the weight of living two lives. The guilt, the hiding, the pretending, it all becomes too much. Both endings hurt, both leave scars, but neither happens overnight. It's the slow build, the ignored signs, the silent drift that we often choose not to see. So here's the real question. Do we wait until the ending writes itself? Or do we wake up before we lose something that was once worth everything? Because if we don't notice what's fading, we might only see it clearly once it's gone. The truth we've explored may feel heavy, even uncomfortable, but discomfort is often the first sign of clarity. Because once you understand how these patterns form, how emotional drift begins, how justifications grow, how hearts quietly shift, you no longer walk through life blind. You start to notice the subtle signs, the silence that lasts too long, the glances that avoid, the conversations that feel off. And when you see it, you don't react out of fear or anger. You respond with awareness, with presence, with strength. This is the heart of Stoic wisdom. Don't let emotions control you. Don't chase or cling. Instead, stand grounded. See clearly. Love with intention, not dependency. Because when you understand the game, you no longer play it unconsciously. You choose who you are and who you will never become. And that, in a world full of noise, is your quiet advantage. Here's the truth no one really talks about. Most married women who drift away aren't trying to betray anyone. They're not chasing scandal or chaos. They're simply searching for something that quietly disappeared. Connection, attention, a piece of themselves they lost along the way. And once they believe that what they're craving can't be found inside their marriage anymore, the door begins to close, not with anger, but with resignation. That's what makes it so dangerous. It doesn't feel like rebellion. It feels like survival. But if you understand this, truly understand it, you gain an edge most people never will. You stop reacting blindly. You start seeing the signs. You stop asking, why did this happen to me? And start asking, where did the disconnect begin? Awareness doesn't just protect your heart, it sharpens your presence. And in a world of emotional noise, that clarity is everything.